In this FreeCAD tutorial, we'll be modeling the following object using the Part Design Workbench. I'll be referencing this image for the dimensions throughout this project, so I'll include a link to this if you'd like to download it for yourself. So to begin, I'll go ahead and just create a new project in FreeCAD. Make sure I'm in the Part Design Workbench, and I'll create a new body, followed by a new sketch. I'm going to be starting this model by creating this top-down view in my 2D sketch. So I'm going to choose the XY plane. And now that we're here in the Sketcher workbench, I'll create a rectangle for the base of this object. However, instead of the regular rectangle sketch tool, I'll do the centered rectangle. That way I can position it on our origin here and drag it out so it's symmetrical. I'll go ahead and give it a 40 millimeter vertical distance constraint on this line here. 40 millimeters. And for the horizontal distance, I'll give it a 70 millimeter constraint. So we'll give that a 70 millimeter distance. Cool. And I'll go ahead and create this circle while we're creating this view. So I'll come here, place our circle, and we can see from the diagram that is a 10 millimeter diameter. So I'll give it a diameter constraint of 10 millimeters. Now for the positioning of the circle, we can see that the center point is 15 millimeters away from the bottom right corner of our square on both the horizontal and vertical axis. So I'll select my center point, select the bottom right corner, then I will give it a horizontal distance constraint of 10 millimeters. Now I will select the center point again, select the bottom right corner, center point, bottom right corner, and then we'll give it a vertical distance constraint. You can see here our sketch has turned orange, which means we have some redundant constraints. So if I were to try to create a 10 millimeter constraint here and click OK, you can see that nothing really happened. And the reason is we have this constrain point on object constraint. And this was auto-created when I created this circle. You'll notice when I had made it, I placed my mouse cursor over the x-axis on our sketch, and you can see the icon for that constraint shows up next to my circle tool. So we actually don't need that tool, or that constraint. So I can select it and hit delete. And now we have the freedom to move this circle up and down. So now if we select the center point, and then select the bottom right, now we can apply this vertical distance constraint of 10 millimeters. Drag these out just to kind of clean up our view here. And we can reference our sketch. Oh, and actually I was creating 10 millimeters. I was supposed to be doing 15, so let's fix that. 15 and 15. Now if we reference our sketch, from our top-down view here, we're looking pretty good. So I will go ahead and close this sketch, and I will tasks and hit pad. And of course, you can also access the same tool from this location here. Click pad, and the default pad length is 10 millimeters. And if we refer to our diagram here, we can see that 10 millimeters is the correct depth. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. All right, so this bottom portion is done. Now I'm going to go ahead and target this top portion of the sketch here, or the model. So to do that, I'm going to select this face and create a sketch using this as kind of our sketch origin. So I'll click this face here and then create sketch. And I'm going to need to reference this line to create our this kind of top portion on. So I will add some external geometry. Click this line here, and now we have this reference line to build on top of. So I'll use the polyline tool to kind of sketch out these lines that make up this sort of U shape. So I'll start at the bottom left, and again, notice over your mouse cursor, there's a constraint icon. So that is a coincident constraint, which is what we want. So I'll bring that up. I'm just going to kind of build a rough outline of this shape. And I'll bring it all the way down. And again, I will create the vertical constraint, the little line you see there, as well as the point on object constraint. Okay, you can right click to get out of that line selection tool on the polyline. Right click again. So now we'll want to go ahead and define some dimensions on these lines that we created. We can see on the left here that we have a total height of 40 millimeters from the top of that line to the bottom of the pad we had already created. We know that this pad is 10 millimeters in height or depth, so that means this line will need to be 30 millimeters total to 40. So I'll actually use the vertical distance constraint, give it a 30 millimeter distance. If we reference the sketch, we can see that this shape is pretty symmetrical, so this line here will need to match up this line here. So I will select the line we just created, and this line, and I will use an equality constraint. So now this line inherits the kind of properties of this line. Since we had already defined a vertical distance constraint of 30 millimeters, this one is also constrained to that. Now we will go ahead and create this top portion. So we've got a distance of 10 millimeters here. Select that, give it a horizontal distance constraint of 10 millimeters. Now, again, we could either just manually create it on the other line, or we can use that equality constraint, select both of these, hit equal. Okay, we're good there. Now, if we reference this other value, we've got a vertical distance of 20 millimeters for this line here. So I'll go ahead and do that. Say vertical constraint, 20 millimeters. Cool. And once again, I will go ahead and just create an equality constraint so that these two match up. Okay. Now, FreeCAD has highlighted our sketch green, and it says it's fully constrained. So at this point, it's looking like we're good to go. But if we go ahead and close out of the sketch and then try to pad it, we'll see that it throws an error, recompute failed. Well, we can click OK, get out of here, wire's not closed. So what that error message is telling us is we didn't close the sketch we had created. So if I come over here into the model view and select our pad and hit spacebar, we'll actually hide the pad and we can see the sketch we had just created. And of course, it's obvious now that we are missing this bottom line to fully close this sketch. I'm going to show that again. So if we double click on sketch, we can come back here. And now what we can do is use the line tool and go from our bottom left point to our bottom right point. And now you'll see that we have a redundant constraint here. And the reason why is when FreeCAD is doing these auto constraints for us, as you may have noticed, once I mouse over here, it shows that coincident constraint. Once I mouse over this one, we have both a coincident constraint and a horizontal line constraint. Well, we also have this point on object constraint. So basically, we don't need that anymore. I can just go ahead and select that and hit delete. You'll see we lost some of our constraints here. So let's see what's going on. Okay, so if we grab our sketch here and drag it around, we can see where we are under constrained. And in this case, it's on the horizontal axis here. So I'm just going to select this bottom line and create a horizontal distance constraint and give it 40 millimeters. Hit OK. And now we are fully constrained. So we can close out of the sketch and we can come back to tasks and pad once again. And you'll notice again, that pad didn't seem to work. If we were to hit OK, it gives us a warning message saying results has multiple solids that is not currently supported. Well, if you click reversed, you'll see that now our object is showing up. So what's happening here is before we had reversed this pad, it was trying to pad the object out away from our object, our existing object. So if you imagine this going in the opposite direction as to where we are currently extruding our pad. And basically what's happening is because we have a distance of 0 between these points here, FreeCAD is not recognizing that as one single object. And so when we were trying to extrude the opposite direction, it was recognizing it as two objects, which, as our error message stated, not currently supported by FreeCAD. So we'll just reverse that, and then we're good to go. So of course we want this portion to extend all the way across the length of our pad here. So you could just increase the value here to make that happen, or my preferred method is changing the type from dimension and selecting up to face. And then you can just click on this face back here, and it will kind of extrude that sketch all the way across to the face that you had selected. Okay, so we can click OK. I'm going to close out this report view just so it's not filling up our screen. And now we can go ahead and create this angled cut that we have here. So to do that, I'm going to select this face of the object and create another sketch. So I will select this face. We're going to be creating a sketch. And this is pretty similar to what we just did, except in this case, instead of padding our sketch, we're going to use the pocket tool. So once again, I'll need some external geometry here. I'll select this top line, and I'll select this bottom line. So if we look at our sketch, we can basically see that we need to cut out kind of a triangle shape here. So to do that, I'm going to create a point and place it on this top line. Again, being mindful of the constraint that it's auto creating. And we can see here that we need a total length of 20 millimeters on this top face remaining after we do this cut. So what I'll do is I'll select the point I just created, and then I'll select this top right point, and I will create a horizontal distance constraint of 20 millimeters. Cool, so that's spaced properly. But now we need to complete this triangle shape in order for us to do the cut. So I'll just use the line tool here. I'll start from the point we just made, go all the way to our leftmost reference point, create that line, and I'll create another line from that point to this point. And then finally, we will create our last line connecting the 3 points. And now we have our triangle. So we can close out of here, come into tasks, and we can do the pocket tool. So we'll pocket that. And once again, if you prefer to, you could increase your length manually, or just change your type to up to face, and then select the face you would like to cut to or pocket to. Okay, you can click OK. And now we just need to complete this last feature of our object here. So once again, I will select an existing face of ours to build our sketch upon. I'm going to select this one back here. We will create a sketch. And if we refer to our drawing here, we can see that this back wall needs to be 20 millimeters high. So I will create a reference geometry of this bottom line here. And I'll go ahead and create the reference line for this point as well. I'll use the rectangle tool. I don't necessarily need a centered rectangle, so I'll just use a normal rectangle. And I'm going to just kind of create it out here, floating in free space for a little bit, just to kind of take a different approach when I'm creating this. So I'm going to define my constraint for the 20 millimeter vertical distance here. So we'll do 20 millimeters. And instead of hard coding any sort of horizontal distance, because I don't think the sketch really tells us exactly how long it is. But what we do know is that our bottom corner meets here. So I will take this point and use the coincident constraint and join it to this point. Oops, click that again, okay. And now we can see that our length of this object is a little bit long. So once again, I will just take our point here, coincident, and select these 2 points and then give it a coincident constraint. Okay, so now we're fully constrained, and you can see that we need to create a fillet in this design here. So there's a couple different ways you can go about doing that. One is creating the fillet here in our sketch, and that would work pretty well. Or if we close out of here, we can pad. And once again, see how it's gone blank, and if we OK, multiple solids, well, again, it's trying to pad that object away from our existing object. So if we reverse it, let me close this here. If we click this reverse button, it will change the direction in which we're padding. And so now FreeCAD's happy. We'll pad it 10 millimeters because that is the thickness of that wall. Hit OK. And at this point, we could select this line and then simply use the fillet tool in the part design workbench. And we can ramp that up to our specified 20 millimeters. You can either manually just click all the way up, or you can just type in the value you want. And you'll notice something, that if you try to give it a 20 millimeter radius and hit OK, gives you an input error, failed to create fillet. Basically, what's going on here is the FreeCAD fillet tool is very sensitive about lines kind of overlapping or joining each other, basically. So if we were to reduce this fillet value to 19 millimeters, you can see that these two lines are not completely touching, and FreeCAD's happy. We could even bump it up to 19.99, hit OK. And then if you zoom in, you can see they're still not touching, so FreeCAD's happy. But the second you try to make those exactly 20 millimeters, where those lines would then be joining, FreeCAD has an issue with that. So depending on the nature of your design, if you just kind of need a quick and dirty solution, 19.99, that may be plenty of precision for your part. But if you'd like to go about it in a different way, we can create that fillet in our sketch. So if you need to go back and modify a sketch after you've already padded it, you can select the pad from the model view, hit the drop down arrow, and then double click your sketch. And then we're back in the sketch view. Now we can use the fillet tool to create our fillet in our sketch view here. So I'll just select this tool and then select the two lines which I'd like to create a fillet between. And you'll notice a few things happen. So first off, we lost our vertical constraint that we had created previously, so we'll need to address that. And it's created these tangential constraints between the lines and the arc that was created. And you'll notice we have this line portion that's between our bottom point and our arc. For our particular model here, you can see that there's actually no need to have a vertical line between this point and the arc. So that may actually cause some issues for us, having this line here. So I'm going to go ahead and select it and then just hit delete. And you'll see it's removed that tangential constraint for the bottom point of our arc. So what we can do now is just select this point and then select the point we will need it to be joining to, and then use the coincident constraint. Now our arc, of course, it's looking a little off now, so we can just give it a diameter constraint of 40 millimeters. And it's looking better, but we still need to add that vertical distance constraint that we had initially lost. I'll select this line and give it 20 millimeters. Okay, we're fully constrained. We can hit close, and our pad has already updated. I'll close out this old report view. And now you can see our model is completed. Let's see, you'll notice how we're still currently seeing this sketch here because I had selected it and pressed spacebar at one point. So typically you wouldn't be seeing the highlight of the sketch. So I can hide that. Okay, well, that completes this tutorial. Thanks for following along. I hope you found it useful. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments. Thanks. Bye.